So before we really get going on working on the spoon and doing the layout and stuff, I generally like to try to get the wood flat and stuff, and also get my tools prepared. And so this is my axe that I use. It's a small forest axe from Grand Forest Brooks, if I'm saying that right. I'm not Swedish. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but this is an awesome little axe. I've used it for quite a long time, and it keeps an edge really, really well. It doesn't fold. It's not soft metal or anything like that. So I enjoy using it. And to keep it going well, though, I just sharpened it up a little bit the other day. And so here, before we get going, I'm just going to make sure that it's nice and sharp. And I think I'm going to use my stone here, and we'll get going and just get it nice and sharp. It's a lot better to have tools that are sharp than it is to have tools that are dull, because dull tools generally cause a lot of issues. And I'd rather not have issues. I've hit myself a couple times before with an axe. That wasn't because it was dull, that was because I accidentally hit the handle of the axe on the wood before my blow hit, and so the handle turned the blade right into my hand. So if you're thinking of getting into spoon carving or anything with an axe, just be mindful and use a shorter handled axe. This one is kind of long handled. I do prefer the long handle for doing some of the work that I do, because generally having that a little bit more length gives you a little bit more power. So there are some strokes that I take that I just need a little more oomph for, and so it's kind of helpful to have that, especially when if you're working with wood that is harder or maybe not as wet as you're used to. It makes life a lot easier. But this axe is generally predominantly used for going out and being like a good camping axe. It's a good size for that. It's probably about, I like to find out. It is about 19.5 inches long, so it's got some height or length to it. But again, it just helps it quite a bit when you're going through those long things. If you were to take this out camping, though, this would be probably my first choice, just because you can split wood with it, and you can you could take down a small tree with this pretty easily. It would still take a long time, but you could do it. There we go, that's a little bit better. So when I'm checking, I am not taking my finger and running down the blade, because that's a sure way to cut yourself. But if you go across the blade and are intentional about going across the blade, generally you won't cut yourself. All right. So now what I have here is a strop, and I've got some, actually I can probably find. Generally I put honing compound on, and the honing compound just allows us to get this axe up to a nice polished shine, which is better because it takes all the burrs off that piece of metal, because I've been using that stone on it, and the stone is basically flipping the metal. So you have this point up here, and what we're doing with the stone is you're flopping it one side to the other side to the other side to the other side. And what you're trying to do is take off material each time you do that. But generally, whenever you end with the stone, you're going to have it with one side or the other that has a little bit more metal on it from the curving. And that's little bit of metal is usually called a burr. And So that's why we use leather or a strap like this one on a wooden thing. You can also use a piece of wood that's flat too. Just put a bunch of honing compound on it. But generally, leather works a little bit better because it'll actually have a little give to it. So it'll ride up over that curve or that edge there and curve and bend right with it, which is generally a little bit more preferred for an axe like this. Now, back in the day when they had axes, and you hear about guys cutting down trees, the lumberjacks and stuff like that, they were able to shave with their axes. And, axes were very personal. You would, very seldom was it ever a thing where you would borrow somebody else's axe unless they really trusted you, just because of how much time goes into sharpening an axe. And if you take an axe and just go right into the ground with the front of the blade here, that's a big no-no, because that can really dull it quite quickly. Even though it's hardened steel, a rock can bend that blade pretty good, because it is still very thin when it's nice and sharp. So there's your little bit of history lesson that you probably weren't ready for, and maybe didn't need to know, but you still know it now. It takes quite a few strokes, but you can see that it's starting to give it a little bit of a polish, and that's what we're going for. Also, the smoother it is, the easier it is to go through the wood. It doesn't have quite as much friction to snag or tie up the blade on. You guys can see it on there or not, but you should see that there's a kind of right there, we might be able to see it, there's a little bit more of a shine up here than there is here in the middle. That's just because I'm trying to work on the working edge, not necessarily here in the middle, but I will come back and try to smooth that out a little bit right at the moment. Just to make it work a little bit better. Right now, I think that'll be sufficient. So, like I said, all I gotta do for the moment is take a piece of wood and make it a little bit smoother on one side so we can start doing our drawing out and come up with a template. So, alright, we'll get going with that here, I think, and call it good for now. So, sharp, it's nice and sharp. Alright, so here's my piece of cherry that I've selected for this, and it's not super wide, let's see here, just under 3 inches wide. We're at 2 7/8, right about there. So that might make math a little bit harder, but the basic goal that I'm trying to do is to create a fork kind of looking thing up in here. Now you'll notice there's a lot of tear out here, and that's because I was using the axe going this way, which means that my grain orientation is going to be this way. So I can have a bowl here and be fine. It means I won't have as much tear out back on the other side down here as I did up here. So basically what I'm saying is that when I put the bowl up here, I shouldn't have any more tear out issues going forward. We'll see how that goes, but I'll put the bowl, in this case it's a fork, so it'll be the fork, and then the rest of this will be nice and straight and should be easy to work. If I go the other way though, and I were to put the bowl here, it would be incredibly difficult to get smooth cuts with the draw knife or any of the other knives, and you risk tearing out a lot of wood unnecessarily and causing just a lot of work for yourself. So that's also why I do it with the axe ahead of time, just to try to see if I can smooth it out and figure out where the grain's going. That gives me kind of a battle plan going forward here. All right, so back to this. I'm gonna go ahead and take this. We're gonna go down to about the 3-inch mark. Right there. So that this much of the 3 inches of it will be the fork length, and I'm probably gonna go about 1 inch more actually. Just looking at it, it's a 14-inch piece of wood. Let's do 3.5 on this one, just to give it a little bit more distance there. All right, put that there. Got this feet square. All right. So there we go. All right, so this will give me the rough outline, or an idea of how I want the outline to go. So again, this is going to be the portion of the spoon, or fork in this case, that the tines are going to be on, and then the rest of this will be the handle, or should be at least the starting of it. So yeah, I'm going to work on this for a couple minutes here and see what I can come up with.
Laughing. He had no idea what he...
Alright, so I'm not an artist by any means, but this is kind of what I got, and I'm okay with it for the moment. So I've got my basically 3 triangles making the tines here. I think you guys can see that pretty well. So next what I'll do is I will probably come in here and drill these out with we've got a drill press here, and so I'll drill those out. That way I can come in later with a saw and cut out that piece of wood right there. And then you'll also notice that I've got another cut here that I'm going to make. I'm going to come down to the handle on both sides, and that's called a stop cut. And we use that a lot in spoon making, so that I can take the material back here off on the handle, on both sides of the handle, without damaging up here in the bowl. So generally what I'll do is I'll flip this upside down like that, and I'll start cutting down into here and take all that material off. So that's kind of what I'm doing. But yeah, I kind of like that for the moment. We'll see how it goes, see if I can make my cuts symmetrical and see how it looks. It's one thing to look at it right now. Maybe you artists out there have a better eye than I do. To me, it looks pretty okay right at the moment, but we'll see once it's all cut out and kind of go from there. So that's what we're doing. So next I will come in here and drill those out. All right, so now I got these cut, and I think I did a pretty good job. So now I will come back in and cut this out with a saw, probably make my stop cut, and then we'll be ready for axe work. All right, so I'm in the midst of doing the draw knife work on this spork fork thing. So I've done this one side. I'm gonna do the other side of the bowl. And you get to kind of see how that goes. Let's see. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to look on this one side where I have the drawing and then cut down to it, or at least pretty close to it here with the draw knife. And then I gotta come back and make it somewhat symmetrical with the same draw knife. And with the other side there. Here. A little bit of work here on the tine, and some more work back here. This saves a lot of time and effort if you make a spoon or a spork the other way, which is if you were to just do the axe work and then go to this part with a knife. It's doable, but a draw knife just makes it a lot easier. And then you come back over here, take this stuff off. There we go. Just like that. So then now it's ready for detail, or not quite ready, but we're getting a little closer. So you can see that I have the back pretty much shaped out to the way that I want it. There's still a lot of material right here, which I need to take out. And I can do that really quick here with the draw knife as well. But this is getting closer to where I want the wood to be. There's a little bit right here that I need to take off. A little bit right there. So we'll do that really quick. And again, I'm just looking for my line. And just gonna take little bits off at a time on this part. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Okay, just like so, and then come across the top there. Just kind of evens it out a little bit. Okay, so now we'll work on the back of it here. Okay, so now I've got kind of like this S shape going on here. Kind of, or at least it's got a pretty interesting curve going on right there, which is a little bit better. There's still kind of a bit of material right here, which isn't horrible. If you look at Swedish style spoons, there is generally a bit more material right here where the bowl meets the handle, but I am going to take a little bit of that off. So here's where what I was talking about earlier, and I thought I would avoid it, but evidently not. There's a little bit of tear out in this back part of the spoon, so it's pulling out more chunks of wood. So I just gotta be really careful right there. And we're gonna make this a little narrower. Okay, so that is getting pretty close. You can see there's a little bit more material on this side. So we're gonna try to take that off right at the moment. Okay, so now we're getting really, really close to what I would consider is the knife portion. So then we go through and we got to clean up all in here to make this a little bit more symmetrical, so I don't have the hole where I drilled out with the drill press, and then also make it a lot smoother. We'll also make this into a little bit of a cupped portion right here, and then smooth out the rest of the spoon here. So that's kind of how that all goes together. All right, so I kind of forgot to film some of the other parts of this, but so I forgot to film the. All right, guys, so I forgot to film doing all of the knife work to the spoon here, or spork rather. So I already just finished up doing that, and I think it turned out. Excuse me. A little dusty in here. I think it turned out pretty good overall for the most part here. So yeah, I just finished up doing that, and I already scraped it too. Usually what I use to scrape it, when I talk about that, I am using a card scraper. Now there's a couple different types of card scrapers that you can find, different shapes and styles and things. And this is one that I have that I use generally a lot, but this one needs to be sharpened. So I'm going to probably do a video on that here soon. But anyhow, I didn't use that one today. I used this one, and it doesn't really matter. Whatever kind of works for you and can get into the nooks and crannies. And this one actually does a pretty good job. And what a card scraper does is you just take it and I'm going to use a piece of wood here. It'll take like a little bit of wood off. You can kind of see a little bit is coming off, and it's actually making a very smooth part of the wood right here. So it smooths it out. It's like sanding. Before sandpaper was a thing, you would use a card scraper, and I'll do a video on more of that. But anyhow, going back to what we're doing right now. With this spoon, I already scraped it, and so then what I'm kind of in the process of finishing up here is I will come in with an antler like this one, and I will do what's called burnishing. And so I'm just going over the whole spoon, in this case it's for spork, keep getting that mixed up, and rub it on over it, and that gives it a bit of a sheen. It also helps the wood grain kind of tighten up a little bit before I get going and put the final wax coating and all of that fun stuff on there. But basically, yeah, I'm just going over the whole spoon and just making it look a lot nicer. And it gives it a nice little sheen to it. Again, this is something that would have been done around the 1700s to make things a little bit shinier for many of the products. Whether or not it would have been used for a spoon, probably on the handle, but maybe not on everything else, because sometimes you were just trying to do form and function depending upon where you were. If you were a wood carver back in a town or a city, you probably would take the time and make them the correct way and give them a lot of flair and stuff. But if you were out on the prairie or if you were out in the wilderness, you probably just wanted something to eat with, and you didn't really care so much as to how it would look. You just get it done, get it made. That was definitely part of it. Now, that all being said, I do know that many of the pilgrims and frontiersmen would have taken a lot of pride in their work. I know they did that with a lot of the different jobs that they would find themselves in need of doing, such as building a cabin or making a canoe or any of those things. Those take a lot of skill and a lot of time. So could they have taken more time and made a spoon that looked good and felt good in the hand? Yeah, sure. So, I don't know, just a little rambling history there on spoon and fork making. But I think this one looks pretty good, and the next step is to put the final coats on it, and then it should be ready to go. So yeah, that's where we're at with the spork at this moment.